Hi, this is PG of PG's Lumacy. In this tutorial, we will be making the camels for the Rainbow Loom Nativity Series. The colors of bands that we will be using for this project will be light beige for most of the figure and a few black bands for the markings on the snout. If you cannot find the light beige bands because they are not original Rainbow Loom bands, you could use the caramel colored bands from Rainbow Loom. We will complete this project on a single Rainbow Loom, but we will do it in multiple steps. The first step will be to create the front part of the camel, and it will include the head, the neck, the upper body, and the front legs. Let's start by placing the bands for the head. In this project, unless otherwise specified, we will be using double bands. Let's place our bands for the head. We start with the double bands on the top center pins, and then diagonal bands from the second pin from the top on the left and on the other side as well. Then our next row will be vertical double bands. Then for the next row, we have a vertical placement for the center bands and then diagonal bands for the sides. I usually call this the chin area. Let us now move on to the neck area. First, we place vertical bands on the center and then diagonal bands on the sides. To that, we add vertical bands on just the left pins and the center pins. There will be no bands on the right pins. We add another row of bands. Then we add a third row of bands for the neck area. As we go into the upper body, or what we can call the chest area, we place vertical double bands, just like on the neck, but then we add a pair of diagonal bands going to the right pin, from the center to the right pin. And then to that we add a row of vertical double bands. Then we add two more rows of vertical double bands. The next step will be to add diagonal double bands from the center to the left and also from the center to the right. And that completes the bands for the upper body or the chest area. Let us now place the bands for the front legs. We place 3 rows of double bands. And we cap those bands with a single band that is wrapped 3 times on this pin. 1, 2, and 3. Let's do that again on the other side. That completes the placement for the bands on the front part of the camel. You might want to pause the video and check to see if you have the same layout. Now let us place the horizontal bands that will hold the pieces together and define the shape of the figure. For the head, we will place a single band that is looped twice, or what I call a double looped band. And to make a double loop band, you get a single band, you twist it, you fold it to itself, and then form the double loop. And then you place that on the pins. We will also be placing double bands to hold the neck, or double looped bands to hold the neck. And again, you twist, fold to itself to form the double looped bands. And this is where I placed that first double loop band. Twist, fold, twist, fold, and those are the double loop bands for the neck. Moving on to the upper body, we will place what I call the 1.5 looped band. And to do that, we place a single band on the pins and then twist it and then loop it back, but only to 2 of the pins and not to all 3. So first place a single band on all 3, twist it, and then loop it back to only 2 of the pins. And that is what I call a 1.5 loop band. Let's do that again for the next row. You place a single band and then twist it and then loop it back to only 2 of the pins. Now for this row of pins, I would like to place a 1 1/3 looped band. And to do that, again, we place a single band on all 3, and then we loop the band on only 1 of them. And I usually do it on the center pin. Just loop it on the center pin. So what you will have will be a single band that is placed on all 3, and then it is looped on this pin, or it is wrapped on this pin to create a 1 1/3 looped band. I use these different kinds of horizontal bands to add more form and shape to the figure, instead of having all double bands or all single bands. I have explained this principle in the shark tutorial. This is now the layout of the bands with the horizontal bands in place. Just to review, we have double looped band on this section, 1.5, 1.5 loop bands on these 2 rows, and a 1 1/3 loop band on this section. Let us now loop the bands, starting with the legs. For the legs, we go into the cap band and grab the double bands underneath and loop them to the forward pin. And then we do that for 2 more of the double bands on the leg. Let's do that for the other side. When we get to this section, we will be looping these diagonal bands from the side pin to the center pin. We grab the double bands and then loop them on the center pin. Let's do that again on the other side. We grab the double diagonal bands and then loop them on the center pin. From there, we will be looping the vertical bands to their forward pin. We grab the double bands from underneath that heavy layer of band, and then we loop it to the forward pin. And grab the one on the sides and loop them to the forward pin. Then you will get to this section with the diagonal band. And so what you do is to loop this diagonal band to the center pin and then loop this center bands also to the same center pin, and then loop these double bands to their forward pin. And then we will proceed with looping the bands for the neck. Again, we get to a section with a diagonal band, and so what we do is to loop that diagonal band to this center pin and then loop the center bands to that same center pin. You might want to push it down so they stay in place. Then we get to this section where we have diagonal bands. I usually call this the chin area, and we will look for the band that is on top. And in my case, it would be these bands. So I am looking for these bands. It is a heavy section. These are heavy layers of bands, so we have to look for these bands. Okay. When you get this teardrop shape, you know that you looped the right bands. Let's do it again. The next ones will be these diagonal bands. We grab them from underneath and then loop them to the forward pin. And then we grab the center bands. When you get to this part, you will have to remind yourself to attach the snout for the camel. Don't be carried away and loop all the way to the top. Remember to place the snout at this time. And for the camel, I will be using a slightly different technique for making the snout. For the ox and the donkey figures in the Nativity series, we made the snout separately from the main body, and then we attached it at this step in the process. But for the camel, I would like to make the snout as a layer on top of the main body. So here is how I do it. I push down the bands that are already in place, and then I place the bands for the snout. And as a guide, I will be placing my first pair of bands on the third from the top pin. 1, 2, 3. And that is where I place my double bands, third and fourth pins from the top. That's my center band. And then on the left, I place another pair of bands, again, third from the top of the left side, and third from the top on the right side. Okay, so that is a row of bands that we have placed for the snout. For the second row on the snout, I place another pair of center bands, and then to that I add diagonal bands going from the center to the left, and then center to the right. And I cap that entire set of bands with a single band that is wrapped 3 times on this pin. It would be the 5th from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 3 times, 1, 2, and 3. I find this method more convenient because I don't have to pull out the snout piece from the loom. I don't have to secure it with toothpicks, and I don't have to reattach it to the main body. I hope that you will find this technique easier than the first ones I have already taught you. Now let us loop the bands for the snout. You have to remember that you are working in layers, and you have to make sure that you are only looping the bands that we need to loop for each step. And so we work on the diagonal bands, working with the bands that are on top, and in my case it's these bands. Go into the cap band and then grab the double bands on top and loop to the forward pin on the right. Next we grab these bands and if that happens, hopefully your hook is still in place. Just replace those cap bands on the pin and then resume your looping. It will be a good habit to hold on to the cap band while you are looping. And then grab the center bands. Again, hold on to the cap band and then loop to the forward pin. Now let us work on the vertical bands that we have placed for the snout. Okay. Hold on to the bands that are already in place and then loop the bands underneath to the forward pin. Here we are grabbing these bands and then loop the center bands. Now we have the snout bands looped, and if you were doing the earlier method, you would be attaching the piece to this part here. You could refer to the ox and the donkey tutorial if you wanted to check out the first method. Now let us loop the bands on the head. This will now be thick layers of bands over here, and we are looking for these bands. So we go underneath, grab those double bands, get them out of the pin, pull and loop to the forward pin. Let's do that on this other side. We are looking for these bands. Pull out and then loop to the forward pin. Then grab the center pins. When we get to this part, there is another reminder that you need to give yourself, and that is to place the ears for the camel. And I will be showing you two methods for making the ears. One will be freehand, and the other will be using the loom. The first method that I will show you for the ears will be freehand, using just the hook, and I will be using a fine crochet hook for this. You will wrap a single band on the hook 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's lipped, 4, and 5. Okay, so you will have a total of 5 loops on the hook. Then you will get another single band, and you will thread that single band into the loops that are on the hook, and then get the loops in the middle. You will form 2 loops. Okay. And then you will place the loops on top of each other like this. To form the ear. You will not just fold the band to itself like this, but you will actually place the loops on top of each other like this, and then you will place those loops on this pin for the ears, like so. Okay, and for the other method, we will be using these unused pins on the layout. You will place a single band on these 2 pins, And then wrap a single band on this pin 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And just even out the stretch on that band that we placed. And then grab the single band that's underneath, then pull it out, and then loop it to this forward pin, and then pull that entire piece of the loom. Be careful when you pull the cap band out, it's tight because it was looped 5 times. Okay, and you get the same results. Some people may find this easier for pieces like this, so you could always use this method. And like we did with the first ear, we put the loops on top of each other like so, not folding the band to itself like this, but actually putting the loops on top of each other. So we have a flatter ear. If flatter is even a word. Okay, so let's place the loops on the other side, and that will be the ears for our camel. Now let us resume looping the bands. Okay. We're grabbing these bands and just loop them on this pin. Okay. And then okay. And from there, we just loop the bands on the top of the head. We're looking for these bands. Then on the other side, we're looking for these bands. And then the center bands. So this is how the layout will look like after the bands have been placed on the loom. Now let us secure the top loops with a single band, and just insert the hook into those loops and get the band into them, and then tie a knot with a single band. Don't pull on it too much. Just make sure it's fastened securely enough, but don't pull on it too much. And I usually hang it on my left forefinger and get the loops off the pin with the hook. Instead of using this to pull out all those bands, a lot of times this will break. And then again, for all the thick layers of bands, use the hook to pry the bands off the pins. Okay. I'm still using the hook because these are heavy layers. from there, you could just pull them out. So here now is the front piece for the camel. Just stretch out the bands so they will fall into place. And then this snout piece, I tuck in the front end to create a more roundish shape, and then I just poke into this the underside of the snout to make it more roundish. Okay. Then just stretch the bands out, and you will hear them actually clicking into place. Pull the legs out. Okay, that is the front part of our camel. And to add more definition on the snout area, I looked at pictures of camels, and they have very distinct divisions on their snouts. I get two black bands, and one of them I form into a double loop band. Okay, and then I place that band on my thumb and my forefinger like so. Kind of reminds me of the way we used to play with rubber bands when I was little. And then I get a single band, and I get that single band onto the double loop band. So, okay, I hope I'm not confusing you. There you go. And so the single band is now onto the double looped bands. And the reason why I have this double loop band on my thumb and my forefinger this way is because I will use my fingers to grab the snout like so, and then transfer the double looped band onto the snout. Okay, and then making sure that it's securely in place, I let go, and you will see that our camel now has the distinctive snout, what do you call that, markings, divisions, sectioning, I don't know, just more like a camel. See that? You could probably use this technique for other creatures that have distinctive markings like the camel. Okay, so we set this aside and work on the back part of the camel. Before you proceed to the next step, pause the video and reset your loom to the rectangle configuration. The pins should be aligned. Let us now work on the rear part of the camel. And for starters, we will be placing the bands for the hind legs, and that will be 5 rows of double bands. So let's do that. Okay, let's do that on the other side as well. And now let us place bands that go from the left pin to the center. They're going to be horizontal. because our loom is in the rectangle configuration. The pins are aligned, and so instead of these bands being diagonal, they actually are placed horizontally from the left to the center and right to the center. And then from there, for the main body of the camel, we will be placing 7 rows of double bands. And then to hold the piece together, we will be placing single horizontal bands from this row to this row. And that is the layout of the bands for the rear section of the camel. Now, before we start looping these bands, we need to attach the front part of the camel to these bands in the bottom. So, to do that, we will loop bands into this section of the camel, and we are looking for the top ends of these bands over here. You see these loops? We are looking for this top end of those loops, like so. Okay, and we will be threading double bands into those loops. Okay, I got one. It might be easier to use a finer hook for this. So again, we are looking for the top ends of these loops over here. And that would be those loops over there. And we are threading double bands into those loops. Okay, and the last on the left side. Okay. Okay. And those will form our loops that we will use for attaching the front part to the rear part. Okay, so make sure that the camel is upright and it's facing you. Okay, get the loops on the hook, the center loops, attach them to the center pin. And then get the loops on the left side and attach them to this left pin. And then get the loops on the right side and attach to the right pin. Okay. There you go. So we have those loops as cap bands actually for the entire back portion. And now we will loop these bands. And when you get to this section over here, you will be looping these bands from the center pin to the side pin, starting with this pair of bands. You grab those bands and loop to the side pin. And likewise on the other side, you grab the bands and then loop to the side pin. And then we will loop the bands for the hind legs. So this is how the layout will look like after we have looped the bands for the rear part of the camel. Now we will secure the end loops for the legs, and we will use single bands for that. Just insert your hook into the end loops, insert a single band and make a knot, and then make sure it's secure, and then make sure you secure both legs. Okay, there you go. Get a single band and then tie a knot. Okay. And with that, you can pull the piece of the loom starting with the legs. Okay, and then once again we stretch the bands so they will click into place. Pull the hind legs out and then stretch the front part out. Now here is a design decision I made for the camel. Instead of laboring to create a fuller body, which would complicate the process and also use more bands, I decided to cheat a little bit. And what I did was to make a sheet looking thing that would be draped over the back of the camel to camouflage the empty space that we are creating here. And that design would use less bands and it would be simpler to make. Maybe in the future, if I were not making a nativity camel, but I was just making a camel per se, then I would work on providing a fuller body for the camel or a llama perhaps. But for now, because this is a nativity camel, and it has been used for the caravan for the wise men, it would look so natural and realistic for it to have a sheet draped over its back, and it simplifies the procedure for making this camel. So forgive me for cheating on this one. So to prepare our camel for the drape over its back, we fold the hind legs, because I wanted the camel to be seated on its folded legs. So I don't even have to worry about the details because everything will be covered by the sheet. We just need to fold the front legs to make them look like they're folded legs. So to do that, once again, we use the principle of pulling on the bands to direct the bands to where we want them to fold to. Okay, so see that? We are seeing kind of like knees for the camel. Okay, and then we would like a curve on the neck of the camel, and once again, that is accomplished by the pulling on the band. We pull them a little at a time. Okay, I'm working on the front portions of the bands. As I pull on these bands, I am forming a curvature on the neck of my camel. See that? And then it looks like its head is tilted way too high, so we work at the back and we pull on these bands so that our camel will have a more natural tilt to its head, and yet maintaining the curvature on the neck. Okay, and then we have folded the hind legs, and then we fold the entire body to form the hump. Again, pulling on the bands as needed to get to that shape. Okay, fold the legs. Okay. So what I did here was to fold the hind legs like so. Okay, and then I used the bands that is securing the hind legs to attach them to the front part, forming this empty space and the hump up top. So we are ready to drape the sheet over our camel. Another feature that you could add to your camel would be the nose band. And to do that, first you get two caramel colored bands, or whatever color you prefer, and just stretch them really well until they break. You get past the point of their elasticity and they become more manageable. Okay. Now what I do is I use a fine crochet hook. I tuck in one of the ends to the head area by the base of the snout, and then I tuck in the other end by the base of the neck, the back of the neck. I just work with the band. Sometimes it's hard to fight these bands. It seems like they have a mind of their own, because I want that curvature to be going this way. And let's do that on the other side. Okay, so we got both bands have a good curvature, and then we get another caramel colored band and loop it twice at the base of the snout. Okay. And then we even out the stretching on those bands. And that creates the nose band for our camel. Okay. Not only does it become an interesting feature, it also holds the muzzle, the snout piece better, giving it more shape. There you go. I made a 5-band wide piece based on the triple single design. I guess we will call this the quintuple single design. I made a basic techniques tutorial for this, but it's just a triple single that is expanded to 5 bands wide, and then you drape that over your camel, and you want to bunch up the middle piece on the top to create the impression of a hump. And there they are, the camels for the Nativity series.